Sequel number 109. John Rutherford Parkin Postlethwaite arrives in Uganda to work under the colonial service of the British. And what is very interesting is that is the man whose mission was strategically for the removal, for the fight of SIR.APOLLO KAGGWA from power. Of course, it did not happen when he just arrived. It took him several years. And it is therefore worth to learn who this gentleman was. John Rutherford Parkin Postlethwaite was the son of John William Postlethwaite and Mama Carter Desmond Fogler. This was their only son, who they begot in the year 1884 when they were in China. So John Rutherford Parkin Postlethwaite was born in China. His parents were Britons. And when he grew up, John Rutherford Parkin Postlethwaite, their only son, enrolled to work for the British colonial service. And in 1909, at the age of only 24, he arrived in Uganda. He had left a job in England, of course, as a broker selling insurance. And he saw greater opportunities by joining the worldwide British Empire Colonial Service. So on arrival, he was posted in Acholi land, and he presided over the resettlement of some of the Acholi people to areas where agriculture or cultivation of cotton was more predominant. So he's very much remembered for being the colonialist who was given the job of resettling, displacing people from their homes into new areas for the sole reason of growing cotton, which would then be exported to England. His next posting was in Bunyoro Kingdom. He was, of course, all that time strategizing for the biggest job he had, which was to get rid of SIR.APOLLO KAGGWA. And so, according to David Apter, an analyst, this young man of in his mid-20s, was an administrator out to mete out justice and establish orderly progress and efficiency. According to David Apter, an analysis, this gentleman, John Rutherford Parkin Postlethwaite, was not the explorer and adventure-loving kind of colonialist. He was an administrator out to meet justice and establish orderly progress and efficiency. That was John Rutherford Parkinson Postlethwaite for you. Now, David Apter, perhaps who didn't know about his mission, says that this gentleman hated APOLLO KAGGWA from the very beginning. And this is where I want now to ask, how do you hate somebody from the very beginning who you don't know, who you just met the other day? He was on a mission. That's why the mission began from the day he arrived in the country, although posted very far away, because this had to be an undercover job. It didn't have to be known by everybody. that this was the job he was brought for. Get rid of Sir Apollo Kagwa. So he hated Apollo Kagwa. And in fact, Apollo Kagwa returned fire. Apollo Kagwa, by that time, was around in his mid or late 50s. So he was an old man. And he returned fire. He began to fight this John Rutherford Parkin Postlethwaite. How would he fight him when he's so far away? You know, this British had a system of appointing acting people. If, for example, a provincial commissioner of ginger is leaving for holiday, they get somebody to come and act for him. So they could get anybody in the colonial service. So that's how Postlethwaite came to face with Sir Apollo Kagwa in Uganda during those small times of acting on behalf of for some time as the real officer went for leave in England. And it all began when they started fighting these two by not replying to each other's letter. John Postlethwaite would write to Sir Apollo Kagwa. Sir Apollo Kagwa would refuse to respond. Apollo Kagwa sometimes would write and John Postlethwaite would not respond. So they could not reply to each other's letter. And Sir Apollo Kagwa was a very great friend of the governor then, Governor Jackson, who had begun around 1911. And his governorship ended in 1918. And that's where I'm coming now. Because this sequel is addressing the year 1918. That is when trouble started, when Jackson left the colony as governor of the protectorate. However, one would wonder if you, as John Rutherford Parkinson Postlethwaite, you arrived in 1909. How come by 1918 you have not yet been successful with Sir Apollo Kagwa? The answer is the great relationship between the governor who was leaving, Jackson, and Apollo Kagwa prevented this mission from being effected. Because you see, the governor was not part of this. This was a colonial office deal. Get rid of that man. And the colonial office used an officer they were sending, frustrate that man. The colonial office was the one interested, and not the governor, Jackson, who was very, very friendly to Apollo Kagwa. And so that is why almost 10 years later, Sir Apollo Kagwa was still in place. But now Jackson was leaving. And now the strategy to finish Kagwa had to be redone with the next governor. Now, the strategy, therefore, got delayed. And as we will read in future sequels, the implementation of this strategy did not happen until the year 1925. And then finally, John Postlethwaite was able to get rid of Apollo Kagwa in 1926. He frustrated him so much that Apollo Kagwa had to resign. And even when he resigned, they could not find a suitable Kachikiro for months and months and months. But that is not the sequel for today. The sequel for today, we just wanted to find out who was this man. When did he arrive in the country? Where was he posted first? Why did his mission that sent him fail for so many years and only got implemented in later years? Now, this gentleman who arrived at the age of 25 was able to write some books. The first book he wrote was called African Roses in the year 1937. He also wrote a book called The Affairs of Men in 1939. John Rutherford Postlethwaite, in that regard, the man with a mission which got delayed but finally was implemented, has been introduced as we celebrate the Church of Uganda. Who gave help? How? A very famous missionary was used by John Rutherford Parkinson Postlethwaite to get rid of Apollo Kagwa. But that is not for today. That will be in our future sequels as we get to the year in which Sir Apollo Kagwa was got rid of. May the good Lord bless us all.